Welcome to this flight of the Retail Pilot. I'm your host, Ken Pilot, former CEO and current brand advisor, retail tech investor and board member. I'm thrilled to share with you the insights from some of retail's legends and leaders, as well as my perspective on retail today. This podcast is sponsored by the following. January Digital is a marketing leadership company solving business challenges through consulting, media excellence, and actionable analytics for some of the most innovative, growth-oriented brands in the country, including Carhartt, Kendra Scott, Strivectin, and Steve Madden. Made up of January Consulting and January Digital, they offer strategic leadership services and full-funnel media planning, execution, and optimization, leveraging data to provide insights, yielding client success. Bluecore's software solution turns anonymous online shoppers into known customers and repeat customers. Bluecore enables retailers to personalize and optimize their email, SMS, and site marketing campaigns by delivering targeted and relevant messages based on where every customer is in their journey. Bluecore replaces annoying high-volume messaging with high-value messaging. Customers include Alo Yoga, Neiman Marcus, and Gap. Happy to welcome Sid and Ann Mashburn to today's flight of the Retail Pilot. Sid grew up in small-town Mississippi, but began his design career in New York in the mid-1980s as J.Crew's first men's designer. He designed the brand's first heritage piece, the barn jacket. He was later recruited by Ralph Lauren to join the design team at Polo, and after subsequent stints leading design at Tommy Hilfiger and Land's End, it was time to do his own thing. His wife, Ann, had been on the editorial side of fashion, working in magazines at Conde Nast, both with Vogue and Glamour, and then as a stylist at J.Crew. Since meeting in their early 20s, they'd known that whether it was making mixtapes or throwing parties, what they really loved wasn't just creating things, but sharing them with others. Excited to have both Sid and Ann Mashburn with me today on this flight of the Retail Pilot. Guys, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Ken.
Really happy to be here.
Nice of you to have us.
So before we jump into your journey and talk about the business, share a little bit about what the business is today, and then we'll go back in time to understand how you got there.
We're a vertical retailer from conception and design through the manufacturing straight to the floor and online. And then we have two other channels. We do a little bit of wholesale, and we also do something called On the Road, which is essentially a team of our sales guys that all came up in the store. And they go, from city to city with a master tailor to take care of customers. So we have 5.5 stores right now. So we consider, the store here in Atlanta would be men's and women's. New York is men's and women's. Dallas and Houston are men's and women's. DC is men's and women's. LA, which is in Brentwood at the Brentwood Country Mart, is only men's. But we will have a women's store there in Q4 of this year. So we'll have 6 stores at that point. And then we'll actually 7 by then, because we're going to be opening up in Nashville in Q4 also.
Hot city.
Crazy hot.
It's actually a great city.
Yeah.
It's really fun.
I love the Brentwood Country Mart too. That's a great place to go for breakfast and shopping, and cute location.
Place, yeah.
He does, Jim, the owner, landlord, the word curated got killed by everybody, but he really is an early curator of the high-low. You've got the taco stand, the fried chicken stand, and, James Purse and Goop and, Sid Mashburn. And plus it's a real communal place. I mean, it's almost like the town hall of Brentwood. People come there to sort their mail, for goodness sake. So it's fun.
Sunshine helps.
A lot.
If you're comfortable sharing the approximate size, the sales of the company, that would be great. I know you're privately held, and often that's an impediment to sharing numbers.
Yes, it is. And I'm the perfect person to answer because I don't have an answer. I'm the perfect person to ask because I uncomfortably can't answer. So I will say this.
You keep score. That's not true. You're so competitive.
I do keep score. We're over $60 million in retail sales.
That's great. It's a nice number to have on the board. Let's talk a little bit about the journey to Sid and Ann Mashburn, because you both have shops,
Yep.
but I want to understand more what led you to this crazy point, because as you know, I've been in retail a long time, and I don't think there's anything more challenging than building a vertical brand. But that's something that you took on and are successful at it. How did you get there?
I don't think we realized how hard it was, Ken, to be honest with you. I mean, it really, if I take my shoes off, I'm missing toes from where I've shot myself in the foot, a lot of times. And I think that, Ann was an editor at Vogue, and I was a designer at J.Crew. I was the first menswear designer there starting in 85. And I grew up in retail, since the day I got my driver's license. My grandparents were merchants selling everything from hardware to clothes to furniture. And that's really kind of all I knew. I went to college. I don't know why, but I should have just gone straight to retail because it's such a vocational business anyway. The retail business is, or the apparel business for that matter, I think is very vocational. So when I got, ceremoniously fired from Land's End in 1990, in 2006, it was like we had 5 kids that time. Ann said, well, what are we going to do? And she said, we're going back to New York, right? And I said, well, let's
do this thing that you've always wanted to do. I mean, since I met Sid when we were so young in New York, he's always wanted to, he wanted to be a designer, but he always wanted to have, create the place to sell the stuff. It wasn't just, when we first started this business, people kept saying, well, I don't get it. Are you a designer or are you a retailer? And he would say, well, I'm both, because it was really important for him to not just make the stuff, but to create the environment, to say, this is the music I want to have. This is how I want to make it look. This is how, the feeling I want people to get when they walk in it. The whole time Sid had his design career, half of his time doing that when he had the great opportunity to travel all over, he was shopping and going in shops, and he just never could, when actually, I don't tell this story often, but when I asked him when we were moving here, I'm like, Sid, what are you going to do that's different from, everybody else? He's like, just trust me. Like, there is nothing like what I want to do. And so the great, joy of my life was being able to do this because, so finally he did get fired. I mean, we had all these great jobs. We went out to Land's End. He was recruited to go out there. And I was like, he said, Ann, will you, they're going to fly you out. Let's come out. Let's see if you want to move there. And I was like, Sid, I am from Wisconsin. You do not need to fly me there to tell you that I do not want to live in Wisconsin. But if you really, if it's a great opportunity, sure, I'll go. It'll be fun. And I really thought he would be fired within a year because, that's what they do. They get somebody cool and creative and think they want to change. And
you're kind of familiar with that, right?
So I was like, that'll be an adventure. Fine, let's go. But it took 7 years for him to be fired. And so by that time, we had 5 kids, but we were in our mid 40s. I said, Sid, if this doesn't work, you can always go back and get a job in New York. But having the opportunity as an entrepreneur to be able to totally say, I'm going to do it just the way I want to do it. So we decided then that we were going to do this. He was going to start a men's line of clothing, and we were going to put it in a shop called Sid Mashburn. And
actually, it was another name at first.
Yeah.
It was called Dubuque because that's where Ann was born. And many of my very humorous friends made a lot of fun of Dubuque to the point where it's like, okay, no Dubuque.
Yeah.
And you know what? I didn't really want to call it by name, but at least then it was like, okay, people know where the buck stops and they know if there's a problem, they can call this guy.
Yeah. So we looked at a bunch of different cities and we ended up in Atlanta kind of just like just because, we came here and really fell in love with the real estate that was here. It was or just this particular place. I mean, Sid has a really great knack for sniffing out kind of what is cool. And we had, we came to this little part of town and it was a bit new. It was, it was kind of like the meatpacking district, I guess, when we were young and in New York. And there was just like this vibe. It
was by far the coolest area of Atlanta. And actually at the time it was owned by a guy named Michael Phillips and his partner was Katie Bowman Walker. And, there was this restaurant there that was like a 2-time James Beard Award winner, and plopped in the middle of Atlanta, which was at that time no means a food place per se. This was 2007. And Michael and Katie were visionaries because they were great, kind of like Jim Rosenfield. They were Brentwood Country Bar. They were curators. And so he had, and I didn't realize it when we were first going there, but one thing that I really learned at Land's End, which I will say, interestingly, my design careers were punctuated by 2 direct-to-consumer companies. Okay. Back then, DTC was not a word or an acronym, but all those catalog companies, and also Gap, that was all DTC. And so, but I learned so much more at Land's End than I ever thought I would. And one of the things I learned about was good, better, best, which I think was, back when Mr. Rosenwald, Julian Rosenwald and General Long worked together, they put together this formula that was kind of I guess today it would be like Amana, Kenmore, Viking. Okay. Love good, better, best, because all of a sudden your aperture of opportunity goes from here to here and who your customer can be. You can invite people with not as much dough to people with plenty of dough. And so anyway, that was super formative in trying to figure out where we were going to go and what the merchandise mix looked like. And so we went to this place where they had 3 restaurants that were good, better, and best. Not intentionally. We weren't seeking that out. But sure enough, there was a taqueria, a great sit-down restaurant, and then the finest restaurant in, the South.
What was the vision for your first store when you were thinking about creating this location? Who inspired you? What did you want it to include, exclude? What was it going to look like in your mind's eye?
A man's closet, basically. So we wanted to dress, actually, every man's closet, because we were real keen on the idea of how do we help a lot of different guys. Okay. So we had everything from Levi's jeans, 501s, to Edward Green shoes, which was, at the time, the finest men's shoe in the world. So you had a $55 jean and a $1,500 shoe. Nobody in luxury put a pair of Levi's in their store. Nobody, in selling Levi's puts a pair of $1,500 Benchmade English shoes in their store. And, even today, I only have 2 pairs of Edward Green, and I had to take those on, as a return from a customer. So anyway, it was very important that we said that this was open to every guy who liked style. Okay.
And in the end, it was really just Sid's vision. He's like, I like this pen. I want to put the pen in the shop. I like these books. This would be cool to have these in there.
We had these axes from Sweden, these Gransford Brook, and they're the finest axes in the world. And, they wind up being groomsmen gifts now, but we just were like, where's cool stuff that you can't really find immediately? We even sold audio gear for a while. We sold this Prima Luna amp and a Riga turntable and some, these Canadian speakers. And it was meant to be a guy's place to get gear. Okay.
But mostly clothes. I mean, it took a while to build your merchandise mix up. I mean, that was, we didn't start out right away with everything.
And the other key to it is we found this guy who was nothing but a gift from God, whose name is Conde Nast. He's a master tailor. And we said from the very beginning, tailored clothing was going to be a super important part of what our merchandise mix is. So from day one, tailored clothing was at least 50% of the merchandise mix. And we were able to make our own shirts at the time. We made them up at Fall River in Massachusetts, but we didn't really have the resources to make our tailored clothing. So we bought off of lines, but they built a body for us in their line. Footwear, we were able to do our own footwear. And a lot of that goes back to, it was the first footwear company we ever used at J.Crew back in 1987. It was Alfred Sargent from England. So there was the benefit of having long-term relationships that gave us some opportunity with these mills and with these makers to do some special things.
But the one vision thing that was really important was you started to talk about was the tailor shop. We wanted to have an open air tailor shop kind of to say, we're serious about tailored clothing. And, Sid and I are old enough to remember when Spago opened in LA and that was like open kitchen. And I don't, it was like,
it's a little bit like Waffle House or a Greek restaurant.
Yeah. So
like when you walked in the door, you see the tailor immediately. I mean, it wasn't just for theater. I mean, it's just the real deal. And the other thing that was key there is that it also, the sportswear mix had, again, Levi's jeans. We had tree-torn sneakers. We had Filson bags.
This goes back to really, your role as merchant designer, curator. And we were talking about earlier how one area or potentially a silo, could be a designer silo, has to listen to a merchant in their silo, because together it's 1 + 1 is 3. The merchant from being out there could really figure out, here's the bag I need. The designer may want to design the bag you need, but actually it's a combination of design and what exists. And when you can pull it all together in a shop, and I think, we talked about Mickey Drexler earlier, but when he got into J.Crew and started adding more of the third-party goods to the mix, whether it was a Belstaff jacket or a Timex watch, again, not carrying an entire line for anyone else, but the key item. What's your pick? Is it the Filson bag? Is it the tree-torn sneaker that Bjorn Borg made famous back in the day? Now I'm dating myself, but that's when I first saw it. But it made you feel good because it also allowed the customer to dress, and in a way that wasn't necessarily head to toe in a uniform. They could create their own uniform combining different labels. And I know for me, it makes me feel better than just wanting to be head to toe Banana Republic.
100%. You're 110% right on. Let me go back for a second to where you first started off. Was a successful company like we have is only successful if it's a team sport. And both you and I worked at Polo, and yeah, of course, Ralph gets all the credit, but that team there, is unbelievable. And look at the history and the tenure of those people there that have kept it at that standard. I mean, it's crazy.
Well, it was funny, at Ralph, we would have an entire organization that were responsible for buying vintage fixtures.
Yeah.
So when the stores were being built, they would be amazing. And when you think about Ralph, you don't really think about an item. You think about a place, you think about a lifestyle, you think about a look. And there were a team of people that were responsible for making sure that look was maintained. Over time, customers were really asking for everything in the store. Can I buy the light fixture? How do I get that rug? Where is the photo from? And now more and more of that is available, but it's bringing it all together in a way that's very consistent with the brand. That is really not easy to do, but is so appreciated by a brand fan or a customer.
Well, especially during that time, because we didn't have, Instagram to show us thousands of new things, or Pinterest or whatever. It just was the ability to delight the customer by just showing them something they hadn't seen before in an environment that feels like you. It was really special. And, of course, you can always do that. But I do think it's harder today to surprise and delight somebody with something that they may not have seen already. And
But I'll go back to your earlier question about what did we start out to do. We also started out to make a place where guys like to come to, okay? Because a lot of the places that I'd been to before is women were the primary shoppers for men. And our place is probably 75% men, 25% women. I mean, it's very much flipped in that regard. But you walk in, we're playing everything from, Merle Haggard to Elvis Costello to Brian Eno to, James Brown. And we don't play anything that is not appropriate for grandma or a little kid to be, to walk in. No gangster rap, no death metal. We play records. The rules are on the records. If somebody puts it on, you can't change it until we play through side 2. That's their record. And so it's pretty democratic in that way. But it's meant to be so that it has a very, very, very wide appeal. And that goes back to the good best on the pricing. So at the time when we started out, our shirts started, I think, at $125 and went up to about $195. And those are the woven shirts. And then all the fabrics are from the best mills in the world. We do not cut any corners on raw materials or make. And today we still have a shirt that starts at $125. Now it goes up to much higher because we do handmade shirts out of Italy. But again, it really is meant to be kind of a party every day we open. And the staff is meant to look a little bit like Ocean's 11. Okay. A little Alan Arkin, a little Bernie Mac, and a little Matt Damon, because when you walk in, you kind of want to see a guy that looks like you. And in the early days in Atlanta, people would walk in, and I'd brought a friend of mine with me from Land's End who was a planner, who was like one of the best planners ever and a great merchant. And so we opened the store together, and we're both wearing, people would walk in and go, man, these guys' pants are too short. Their jackets are too tight. And they're wearing big baggy khakis. This is,
Atlanta.
Yes, in Atlanta. And sure enough, then they'd see the tailor shop and they'd go, huh, what's that? And so the whole script kind of flipped right there. They're like, what are y'all doing back there? I'm like, well, we're doing alterations and making clothes. They're like, you make clothes here in the store? I was like, yeah, sometimes depending on what the need is. And so that was so much more. My dad pointed it out that, before we opened up, he's like, that's going to be your credibility maker for you, is that tailor shop. And we didn't mean it quite that intentionally. We just wanted to make sure we had everybody on staff was really good and could really advise a guy. And so we also want to take care of the guy who's kind of forgotten. And, through the years, we tended to be a place to where it was guys who were really knowledgeable about clothes or guys who knew nothing about clothes. The middle, they still didn't really care so much. And so that's the way the men's store started. Ann's store kind of started out of that in a sense.
Yeah. So we were 3 years in, and our landlord, Michael Phillips, just really tried to talk me into opening a small shop 2 doors down from Sid's was vacating. And he was like, oh, you got to do a women's shop. You have to do a women's shop. And I don't love retail as much as Sid, or I thought I didn't. My father worked for the JCPenney company his entire life.
40 years.
Yeah. So
back when Penny's was really good, he was an excellent merchant.
So I would end up, on Christmas vacation, being stuck in the men's accessories department, which was, the euphemism for socks and underwear. And I couldn't think of anything more boring. So it was not my dream. And I frankly was not, I'm not a trained designer. I was a fashion editor, and I felt a little insecure. I was like, okay, I'm not going to, how do I make something that is like the feminine equivalent of Sid? But I did. We have 5 daughters, and I was like, okay, we already have a family business. I was kind of inspired by, all these amazing companies that we work with in Italy that are true family businesses, whether it's the mill or, the factory. Everybody works in the business. And I thought, okay, well, we have a family business. We have all these girls who are probably more interested in what I might be creating than what their dad is making. So let's just give it a try. And I made sure I had a 1-year bump out on the lease. I was like, okay, I will try it. If it goes and it doesn't, if it helps our business, that is the Sid business, expand, then it'll be a good thing. If not, then I'll close up shop. But it went really well.
Ken,
Yeah.
she was $970 per square foot in her first year. Yeah, she was killing it.
That's when you should have maybe closed your store and just joined her.
Yeah,
That's a great number.
Hindsight's clearer than my foresight. So,
But yeah, we just drafted off what he was doing and did the feminine equivalent of it, I guess. Yeah.
It took you a few years before you decided to launch online. And now you're online as well as with the stores. Tell me a little bit about maybe the hesitation of getting into online, because I think you launched online in 2011, well after the stores were established. Mm-hmm. What was the hesitation, and how is it doing today?
I mean, it's a super healthy business today. It's
it's 35+% of the business.
8% of the business. I mean, it was bandwidth. I mean, we were entrepreneurial. I mean, it's like we were every day just getting up and doing the next thing.
And we were lean in the shop. I mean, we were not, we were still, I think we were maybe 4 or 5 guys and 2 tailors at this point.
I mean, we wanted to make sure, we feel like the best representation of our brand at the time was the in-store experience, of course. But we knew we wanted to grow. And, we was figuring out, how do you make the brand? I mean, I have a hard time even calling it a brand. We are a brand, but at the time we still were just, shops. It was our line of clothing that we sold in our shops. But just figuring it out wasn't as easy then. I mean, I look back and I don't think that was that late to the game in a way. Maybe I was just naive.
But actually, which you're right in having that feeling, Ken, it was late according to everybody that was whispering in our ear about our business. But we just couldn't get to it, fortunately, because the brick and mortar business was going pretty well. Plus, we were running, like you said, we were running a vertical operation where we were doing design, merchandising, production, planning.
It was online before we expanded.
It was super iterative.
It all runs together, Ken.
I guess here's the other question, and maybe this will explain potentially the delay. But did you raise any money to launch the business? Do you have investors?
We do now, but that didn't come till we opened our first shop in Houston later in 2013.
Yeah. So we did raise money in 2013. But prior to that, it was just, pulling out of that great bank account.
We didn't touch the 529 account, though.
So funny. So online is driving about 35% of the sales, which is a nice number. Well, let's talk a little bit more. You mentioned the made-to-measure business. I've been involved now with a made-to-measure company for almost half a year, not standard. They do made-to-measure, and now they're looking to do it more as the Intel inside, providing made-to-measure services for other companies, like whether it's Brooks Brothers, who they're working with, or Nordstrom, or Todd Snyder. But what I do love about the business is I love the fact that it adds this bespoke moment to a store, which clearly does that in the Sid Mashburn store. It shows that, we are very serious about clothing and we can tailor something specifically for you. And that's what I like about the business, because I think the experience that you have in stores today should be that much better to show why a customer should actually go to a shop than spend their time online.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, it's also important is because so many guys come with the sentiment of, I hate shopping. So we try to soften that at the beginning with some music and a Coke or a beer or coffee or espresso or something, and we did that really from day one. It wasn't, and we didn't want to set up a bar where you come and hang out all day, but it was meant to be something else as a little bit of a service piece. And if I've forgotten anything, one of the things we really, really, really wanted to advertise was sort of the service and hospitality piece of what we did. Is we really wanted customers to feel like, wow, these guys are not trying to sell me stuff. They're trying to share stuff with me and, help me with my wardrobe.
Let's take a quick break with a word from our sponsors. Predict Spring is a global point-of-sale platform live in 22 countries. The platform includes mobile POS, endless aisle, fulfillment, inventory management, and clienteling, creating a true omni experience for customers and associates. Predict Spring powers Suit Supply, Converse, Lovesac, Decium, Janie and Jack, and Bouclair.
So one thing I also think a little bit more with men that I've noticed in the difference between our two sides of the business is that men actually really love that education piece. And in the same way, maybe they like to pop the hood of the car. They really love to know what's inside. So Sid, because of his design background, is really obsessed with fabric and fit and make and why his things are different. So I think we, just by nature of who he is, we kind of positioned him as being more of a, he's a designer retailer. He's a subject matter expert on all things men. So you can really talk a long time to him about how this is made and why it's going to last a really long time. And I think the made to measure experience really takes that to another level. If a guy really loves that, they're going to enjoy wearing that suit so much more. And actually, that is really what we try to do in the store too. I feel like because I was a fashion editor, I'm not a big shopper. I know exactly what I need. I know how to get it. It does not take me a long time to, go out and get it. But when I would be on vacation and travel with Sid, I would always buy something. I would buy something full price, spend way too much money on it because it was the experience that it was magical.
And the memory.
The memory. So when I went home, I would wear that thing and it would be so much more important to me having had that experience. So one thing.
I'm back in Myrtle Beach, just like that.
We do try to make our stores, it feels so great when you're in it. That gift of being there and talking to that person and remembering what it felt like gives when you wear it again. So that's what we hope the made to measure experience for a man would be. It's just like, it's not just buying a suit. It's like buying the suit that you made and it fits you really well. And the mill that the fabric came from, and the color looks like this certain kind of moss that's described in a certain way. And you're like, wow.
I will say this is, I'm sure you've learned that with the benefits of made to measure come the
nightmare.
The margin of error shrinks to a very, very small margin. So you've got to be really good. So one thing we do that's different, Ken, is, and there was, for a long time, we've had these guys who are traveling tailors that go around the country with various, institutions. But we said, you know what? Every measurement's going to be taken by one of our tailors. Our sales guys are not going to be the measurers. To us, and listen, that doesn't mean it's wrong for the other guys, because there are other guys that do great businesses at this. But we were saying, how do we make sure that person that knows exactly what they're doing, that the sales guy really becomes the scribe, okay? And the tailor's the one who goes, he's missing about a quarter inch on his right shoulder. Boom. The guy's, got it documented. There's so many other details. And the other thing we said early on is, we were not going to do any fused clothing. And I would say today, full canvas clothing is maybe 1% of the whole world's suit production. So we decided to be in that 1%. It's harder. It's more expensive. It is, we think, a little bit more personal to the customer. And that, again, that does not in any way cast aspersions on other people and their product. It's just what we chose to do. And we think it's a differentiator for us. But we don't do it just because it's a differentiator. We just like the feel and the construction, and that there's a little bit more care put into the garment. So that's probably two of the biggest things we've learned. But also, as you know, in that made to measure relationship, if you're going to scale that, boy, your processes have to be really good.
They do. That I've learned. And the nice thing about it also is it does reduce the inventory commitment.
Yes, that's right.
So if you're trying to calculate GMROI on made to measure, that's a tough calculation, but I'll tell you what, it's a positive one. That I do know.
No question.
How big is the made to measure business approximately in terms of its contribution to your business?
Roughly 5%. But it's also, it's nascent still. We have so much more runway on that, and we've run that pretty lean because it's like a three guy team, and then we pull the tailor out. So if we show up in New York, you're going to see 4 guys there. You're going to see 3 of our sales guys and 1 master tailor.
We don't do it for women's. We're wanting to get into it, but we do a made to order shirting business where, we have, even 8 models of shirting, and you can choose your fabric and have it made based on a standard fit, though. It's not tailored exactly to you.
And our men's business is definitely not made to order, because that's usually only taking like 3 measurements. You take a cross shoulder, a body length, a chest. That's pretty much it. We go deep. And so that makes it even more complicated, particularly when you're building the platform, to accommodate that, and also to find the right manufacturer who wants to get in that deep with you. So it goes back to that team aspect is our manufacturers are unofficially on our accountability chart. How's that? They have to be. And on our partner chart, because they're the guys who are, oh shoot, I got to get it there by Saturday or by Thursday because the wedding's on Saturday. We've had many of those instances, and too many to remember, but I do.
As you think about growing the business, marketing has to be a very important piece. What do you look at from a marketing perspective to help get the word out there, to touch more customers, and at the same time, reinforce the brand?
We, do a lot of digital marketing. We need to be on, Instagram. We need to be where our customers are, and that is where they are. So we do digital marketing. Our email campaigns are probably our most successful way of marketing. We're speaking directly to our customer who wants to hear from us. We like to think we have a very personal brand voice and point of view visually. So when we reach out to the customer in a way that's personal and from our brand voice, it's usually very productive. Both of us, do some writing. We have a personal blog that we, use sparingly.
I see that you have Hey Sid, where you get it right from Sid. And then you need this, I promise, which
Yeah,
is
yeah,
your version.
yeah.
I'm sure that's pretty sticky. Your customers are probably also your fans. That's why they're
Mhm.
your customers. And hearing from you what you like and what you think I might need for a cocktail party,
Mhm.
either a male or female, is very important to the customer. They trust you.
Yeah. So it started out with, I started doing that because I like to write. And when I was in the shop, I was, I would say to people, trust me, you really need this. Again, I was not a designer, but I was a fashion editor. And I felt I was able to say to my customers, you don't want to buy this white shirt. This is a very boring thing. It's not colorful, but let me tell you, this is why you need this. And it was, people really trusted me. So I thought, okay, I'm not in the shop anymore. I'm just really going to explain to people why they really would need something. And it just was very successful.
She's the best salesman in the store. And the biggest reason why is because she's sharing more than selling. She really is in the dressing room, along with the other ladies over there, and same thing with the guys. But Ann gets very personal very quickly.
Well, I think it's hard because, there's so much noise out there. Okay. And even though Sid and I are we lead our brands, it's hard to be out there all the time. I don't want to call so much attention to myself all the time because I don't think it's, restraint is a kind of an important part of our brand too. But all that to say, I would say that the big differentiator for our brands is that we are two real people. And when we put our voice out a bit, it is very helpful to people understanding our brand.
And as you know, Ken, word of mouth is our best.
Yeah.
That's our best advertising.
I don't know if you've ever considered or if you've tried doing live stream and sharing with your customer a live stream, which then becomes shoppable video. But I've worked with a number of platforms that do live stream. I assume, are you on Shopify?
Yes.
Yeah.
There are a number of platforms, one that I work with, which is Firework, that can provide live stream, the ability for you to do a 30-minute live stream from your shop. And Sid, and I could see either of you walking through your store or walking through the store together to tell your customer, this is what you need for fall. This is what you need for holiday.
Yeah.
And people want your opinion. They want to see what you're suggesting, and they could actually buy it live online as you're walking through.
Ken, that is canned brilliance right there.
I would love to see you do it because I think you would really make your customers very happy, and it would more than pay for itself.
Yeah.
That's my advertorial.
Yeah. Okay, I like it. I like it a lot.
Speaking of technology, any other technology that you are starting to lean into or looking at? There's been so much discussion around AI, but what does technology mean to moving your business forward?
Oh, working on an ERP.
That's our
On
big
ERP?
Anyway, we're neophytes when it comes to technology, I think. I mean, I know I am. Ann's more advanced than I am.
When AI can, moving towards AI helping you with predicting things about sales and, that's all great. We don't really use it at this point for anything, no copywriting or anything like that.
And it's funny, I work with another platform, Raspberry AI. It's a design platform, and it simply helps you iterate design far more quickly, reducing samples and increasing speed to market. So if you were looking at a floral print on a dress and you want to replace one color with another, you want to change the size by 7%, 10%, 12%. It just does that real time, and you're seeing it on a body. Wow. And by the way, should it be half sleeve, cap sleeve, strapless, however you want to see it, a lot of AI isn't really about replacing people. It's about helping people do something more efficiently, even if it's copy and you want to see a lot more copy. I still need somebody there to decide this is the best one, but now I'm going to have 12 to choose from instead of 2. Oh, Raspberry can take you from a line drawing to an item. You can convert it from, you can take that trench coat or that dress and convert it from a line drawing to a dress and then see it. Oh, I'd like to see it in silk. I'd like to see it sequined. I'd like to see it with a floral print or a ditch print. And it just keeps iterating. And it's amazing where it can lead you and how quickly. But again, it's not replacing the designer. It's just replacing their bicycle with a car.
Right. That's great.
It's a great way to describe it.
I've become a bit of a nerd since my days of being very closely connected with retail and most specifically with merchandising. I hated technology. It was like a necessary evil. If I went to a tech meeting, it better be the fact that our cash registers were out in all stores and they needed me to yell at somebody. And that was all I could really do because I didn't want to have anything to do with it. But now I love the fact that there's so much out there in technology. If half of those things had existed when I was running a company, I may still be in business running companies. How many people are working for the company?
In total, probably, I think around 190, roughly. And that's in the 5.5 locations. We used to have the warehouse here on site and our sitting in the headquarters, which are about 90 seconds across a railroad track to the store. And so we used to have the warehouse downstairs here. We've moved that recently to about 1.5 miles from here. So it's all pretty concentrated.
And how's it working out being married and working together? Looks like it's going pretty well. I mean, you guys are putting on a really good front today, but come on, tell me, how's that working out?
It's so hard, but I think one of the things is by the time we started this business, we had known each other for over half our lives. We were in our mid-40s. So I feel like, to have somebody who challenges you because they know you so well. I mean, Sid he's very strong-willed. He's super competitive. We're really typical male and female, but I feel like there's no way you could have done this without me. I mean, we did this together and, not only challenge each other, but sometimes to have somebody do a better job of speaking for you in a way. I mean, when we built his store, we knew one person in town. We literally did not know anyone. And when we came here, I was really intent on helping him. I was like, I think Sid's cool. I want people to know that and, helped create a space that really highlighted Sid more than he could have done on his own, 100%. But it is,
Our desks are 47.5 inches apart, Ken. Too close for her and too far for me.
We're still mostly crazy about each other. And
it helps to be crazy about each other going into it.
Yeah.
So,
but it's not easy.
It's really hard. It's a little bit like this business in a sense, Ken. It's like, if you don't love what we do, it's going to be a hard business for you because when it gets hard, the love and emotion and excitement and ardor you have for design and product and, the business of commerce, holds because otherwise you'd say, I'm out of here. This is hard.
The problem with us is that we both have some similar skill sets. Like, it's not like I'm just like in accounting. We're both really creative, have a really strong point of view, and usually it ends up okay. But
that makes it harder to hear no from
you don't like it when somebody criticizes something you love. It's really hard. Yeah.
So to that end, who are your mentors? Who do you go to, your outside people, just to kind of do the gut check on, hey, does this sound right? It feels good to us because I'm sure, Ann, as you just mentioned, you guys can be talking to yourselves a whole lot and you both agree it's a great idea. But sometimes, we get into a place where you can't see the forest from the trees. And maybe there's one person we ought to ask before we do fill in the blank. Do you have a mentor or two a go-to person?
First of all, we do have a board that we use those guys as mentors because they're across different industries. A mentor of mine are some of the people I've worked alongside, but also Mickey Drexler at times, Mindy Meads at times. And you know what? Mickey's always so generous and really nice. And Mindy's like, you got too many SKUs. It's like, okay, got it. You're right. And got it. And it's nice to have somebody that knows you well enough that they can really, talk turkey to you. And listen, we're real open to outside advice. So we ask questions. We have a lot of great customers also that come through our business that are always, giving us advice. And, Dow, about old master Tailor who I started with, has been, he's like a Mr. Miyagi, he's just unbelievable in the wisdom he has in just, 3 words.
He is good. For me, Emily Senator Scott, who, she's been great because she worked with her father. Our oldest daughter is a huge part of our business and is, she creative director, but she's unbelievable. It's so talented. But She's given me a lot of great advice on working in a family business. She has given me great advice on being very true to your vision. And, when we started Catalog a couple of years ago, which has been very successful, we do work with an agency, and she challenged me on it. She's like, why? You know exactly what you want. Just do what you want.
So we're here in mid 2024. It looks like about 2 years ago, you put a CEO in the business, but you're still obviously very connected to the business today. Where does the business go? What does Sid Mashburn / Ann Mashburn look like in 2030?
Okay. How many stores do you want to have?
I would say, if you look at it in a super linear way, because we have no idea, honestly. But if I look at it in a way that our 3 and 5 year plans kind of headed towards, is like we see, probably 15 cities, in the United States. And there's probably, 4 to 6 cities internationally. We see that traveling made to measure business, being able to find other cities and also have a team in place. I really like the idea of how do we use, different jobs here as sort of farm club or training grounds for something else. Cause I really like the people on the customer service team and the people on the store team and the people on the road team to almost have the same profile. Okay. So they really are all super knowledgeable about the product and have really great customer hands. And so we see our e-commerce business growing. And I think, more than anything is how do we responsibly grow it and take advantage of the foundation we've built, but not oversaturate the market. We don't want to blow this. I mean, listen, maybe it does blow up. Maybe it doesn't blow up, but we'd like for it to be something that does have some restraint and really is very, very, very special. One of the things we have in a sort of a plan that we've put together is how do we continue to think about creating it, sharing it, and making it special? Like every single customer should get special treatment. Every one of them deserves something special. If they cross our threshold, we got to give them something. If it's a smile, if it's a Coke, if it's a beer, we get them reservations at the restaurant next door, whatever it is, it's like, how do we raise somebody else's boat when they come in the door? And if we do that, there's going to be no shortage of opportunities to be successful in what we do, I think.
If you were to give yourself one piece of advice going back 20 years that you wish you would have taken 20 years ago, what would that advice have been?
I would say to myself, trust yourself more, because I think that if there's any mistakes I have made, it's out of my own insecurity of saying, I really think this is right, but maybe I'm going to ask these other people. And so I think trusting myself.
It sounds stock, but is really living in the moment and being grateful for the relationships that you have. Because I look back across, starting in high school, working, sorting hangers and turning pant legs up on the floor and delivering stuff to somebody's house. I think about the people that I've interacted with along the way. It's like, God, I wish I could have said something else to them,
I guess the flip side of that would be if you were to give someone advice going back 20 years ago, it sounds like you've created great relationships or create great relationships along the way because you'll never know when you'll need them again.
Yeah. Or they'll need you,
They'll need you.
Yeah.
All right. With that, we're going to go to the last part of the podcast, which is rapid fire. So I've got some questions for both of you. You ready?
Oh, cool.
All right. Ann, favorite streamed show?
I loved Shrinking, and that was an amazing thing. I watched it, and Harrison Ford is a big fan of Sid's, and he wears his clothes, but I did not know they were his clothes in the show. And I had to pause it and walk up to the TV screen. I was like, Harriet, I promise you he's wearing Dad's clothes. I promise you. But that's a really good show. I like it.
Sid, favorite stream show?
Right now, it was the NBA Finals.
Sid's he doesn't watch a lot of shows.
I would have maybe thought, like, I could see you falling in love with, like, Mad Men, and just in terms of the clothing and the style of the era.
That was good. That was very good.
Sid can't sit still. He moves all day long and then he just stops.
So baseball, basketball, football, just put it on.
Most inspirational designers.
Today or ever.
You know what? Now that you brought it up, both.
Yeah. I would say, well, of course, Ralph Lauren. I mean, gosh. And I will say this. I also worked for Tommy Hilfiger. Tommy Hilfiger was inspirational too. And I would say tailored clothing, Doug Hayward, who was the guy that dressed Michael Caine and Terrence Stamp. He was not the top guy on Savile Row, but he was the cool guy on Savile Row.
Yeah, for me, I was super influenced by, I grew up in the 60s and 70s. So Yves Saint Laurent was like, that look was just, I'm still all over that. I love that. And a designer from a long time ago that I was pretty inspired by was Zoran. I mean, I do not make clothes like that, but I thought that was, kind of a cool look. So
who would you most like to style?
I would say I'd like to dress just Harrison Ford completely. He's pretty cool. And my other is Sidney Poitier. Of course, I don't think he really needed any help because he and Dick Van Dyke are the two style muses amongst many, but those were pretty good. And Gordon Parks. So
you need to live as long as Dick Van Dyke.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're looking like him lately.
Thank you.
Where do you travel for inspiration?
We travel for work, and that's pretty inspiring. I mean, we're always in Italy. That's an amazing place to be inspired because, you cannot do what we do without just falling in love with the love they have of fabric and make and the way they talk about everything. And I'm very inspired by Italy.
Actually, this is the thing is in our mind and in our hearts and in our work, every place we go is a source of inspiration.
Last question. If you didn't start Sid and Mashburn, what would you be doing right now?
I'd be a DJ at Waffle House. That's where my head's at. Practically speaking, I'd be in food somewhere. I love food.
Sid likes the action. Like he was a bartender in college. He was just like,
you know what? I will say this. The bar I worked in college was the best bar ever in Oxford, Mississippi. God rest its soul, the Gin, run by a guy named Michael Seligman. And it was so fantastic. He was so smart, Michael Seligman was. And across the driveway from him was the Hoka, which was run by Ron Shapiro, the man who brought bagels to Oxford. And that moment in time is Mike Seligman took a person from every fraternity and every sorority and all these independents and all these local people. And that was his staff. And at the end of every night, everybody pooled the tips. So we have a pooled incentive system. We do not do individualized commissions in our store, all based off of that because of the teamwork and just the wow at the end of the night. You walk out of your pocket and, 81 with $100 in your pocket on a Wednesday night. You're like, that was a pretty good night, and also sadly, you're probably on your way to another party, but it was that teamwork that goes on. We're trying to instill that in our shops by having the pooled incentive because then everybody's there to support each other as opposed to, oh, I've got this guy,
So I think it would be fair to say that the Mashburns like to please their customers from the inside out, whether it's from food to look. Yeah. You guys do it all for your customer. And with that, I'd like to thank both of you for being on this flight of the Retail Pilot.
You are very kind and a great person to speak with, Ken. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to this week's flight of the Retail Pilot. And please give us a review on your favorite podcast platform.